All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fueled by Joy Working Dog podcast, and I got a good one for you today. I'm excited to be here. Mr. Keith Sutmiller, legend in 2 tree dog sports, not just one.
Josh, thank you for giving me the opportunity. When you contacted me, I really wasn't expecting the phone call, but I counted a privilege to get to sit down with you also. You're really respected at what you do, and I'm just honored to get to participate.
Well, I feel the same way, Keith. I know I've drawn you a couple times, and I've judged you a couple times, and I always enjoyed our time in the woods together when we were together. And everywhere I go, you know, because I talk to a lot of squirrel hunters through Joy Dog Food and through the podcast or through whatever, and they're talking about Keith Sutmiller and bird dog crosses and all that stuff. And I want to get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
But first I want to just talk about how you got started doing these crazy sports, because you do love to squirrel hunt and you love to coon hunt too, and you've done a pretty good job of mixing the two, I think, you know. And so what got you into tree dog?
Well, I guess you'd call it a little bit of a family tradition. I was actually raised up. You know, now young people and boys, they've got a lot of activities for entertainment. When I was a small boy, seemed like hunting was, you know, what we did for fun on spare time and on weekends and things. And both of my grandpas, actually even my great-grandpas, they tell me, but my grandpas and my father and uncles, we always had hunting dogs. We had tree dogs. My dad loved to bird hunt. He always kept pointer bird dogs, and we don't hardly have quail anymore, but we did back then, and Dad loved that. And we even had rabbit beagles. We did a little bit of all that. But I guess the tree dogs was kind of my real passion. And so, and we had squirrel, you know, I think I said squirrel dogs and coon dogs. So anyway, it's just something that kind of was a way of life way back there, and I just never really got away from it.
Yeah. And you said your granddad and your great-granddad both hunted?
Yes.
What about your dad?
Yeah, my dad did also.
Did
he did also.
Yeah.
And really, it's kind of about the dog. I tell people, and it's kind of different, but I don't deer hunt, turkey hunt, fish. I don't think I've ever killed a single squirrel, what they call still hunting, just sitting under a tree. And I actually like to eat squirrels, by the way. I mean, I don't just shoot them. I bring them in, clean them, and eat them. But it's about the dog. I love to, and I might even just say that I almost can respect any kind of a working dog. There's something about watching a dog. I've even watched herd dogs that just amaze me.
Yep.
And but anyhow, I just tree dogs, trying to maybe come up with a dog, ideally like a young dog that you can see potential in. Mm-hmm. And then just put the hours. We talked a little bit even before this started about, you know, the time involved, and then try to push that dog, keep trying to push it to the next level till you finally get it to, you know, the finished product is something that, you know, makes you pleased, you know, with your kind of rewarding, I guess you'd say, for all the hard work and time that you put into it.
Yeah. As you were growing up, have you lived around here pretty close all your life?
Yeah, my little, the town that's really my hometown where I went to school, most of my family's Wilburton, which is 30 miles east of here. Mm-hmm.
So was it a community deal, you know, hunting with dogs? Was it more popular back then? Was it something a lot of kids did?
Yeah, it was. And back then, you know, you had a lot of course, the licensed hunts was mostly UKC.
Yeah.
But, you know, back then, man, on a Saturday, remember how they would have like all them day events, drag races, treeing contests, bench show. I mean, really, that thing would get going, or when it was time for one of them hunts, it would get started mid-morning and go all night. And it was kind of more of a family deal. You'd see a lot of people just really planned ahead of time to be there. And I have seen change through the years where it's kind of got away from that side of it. But yeah, it was in a lot of young boys and maybe even some girls, you know, really loved to hunt, and you know, they picked up on that.
Yeah. Well, I know because you talked about your granddad, great-granddad, dad, and you got a picture of your son up there winning the first youth squirrel hunt that we looked at, and that was really cool. And you look at all these generations doing it, and That's pretty rare anymore because not only are these kids distracted, they've got so many other activities and things to do, but guys that hunt like me and you hunt, and I talked to Chuck Dunlap about this too, and his boy Colton, of course Don hunts, and hard hunters like us it'll skip a generation on occasion, because when we're out there working dogs, and my kids will be the first one to tell you I'm not the most fun to hunt with when I'm trying to get a pup going or something like that. So was your parents and grandparents really focused on the dogs and you just gritted through it, or was it did they want you to enjoy it and kind of cater to that?
Well, like my father, he loved to hunt, but he didn't make us. I remember some cold mornings we would be planning, and there's two of us. I'm the oldest. I got a brother 2 years younger, just two of us children. And I know, of course, me being older probably played a part in this, but I remember sometimes Dad coming in there like early in the morning. He'd say, "Boys, I'm going to go, but it's sleeting outside and it's cold, and y'all may not want to go, but if you want to." I think I remember a few times my younger brother Steven said, "I think I'll stay here." But I believe I most of the time went ahead and said, "Dad, I want to go," because I don't know, there was something about it. I loved it. And so anyway, but we just, anyway, it was just something that we did. But my dad was a hard hunter, and my grandpa. And and I had an uncle, Joe Sutmiller, that was a real hard hunter, and I felt like a really good dog man. But it's just something that we just wasn't made to do it, but was given the opportunity. And like for myself, I just really enjoyed it. I don't know. And
do you know why? Can you put your finger on why you liked it so much, Keith?
Well, I really like dogs. I don't know. I really am what you'd call a dog person. And so I don't know. It was something about, I think I like dogs anyway. And we didn't keep. My dad, we didn't keep many dogs just in other words, it's almost like they had to earn their keep to be there. So if we was going to have a pet dog, it probably was going to tree something or run, it was going to do something, or it probably we wasn't even going to have it, because Dad didn't mind us having a dog. And we did, I think, a time. We had a collie one time as kids for a while, and she was a good old dog, but there wasn't too many just dogs that we just had hunting dogs. But I think it was I kind of just think the dog and just something about the time spent out there with that dog.
I know me and your dad would have got along pretty good, because mediocre dogs don't enthuse me.
No, they don't. They don't. And I've through the years too, my dad liked a good dog, and my uncle did and stuff. And so my family, the ones that taught me, They tried to set a fairly high standard. I mean, they just didn't want just any. I mean, they didn't always have the best, but they wanted to think they had something that pretty much could sort of compete. They wasn't going to be embarrassed if they went hunting with somebody. And so, anyway, that's how it all kind of got started.
Did your family have coon dogs and squirrel dogs both?
They did. Yeah. They did. And my son Jared. I think sometimes, and I've even talked to some of my friends, I might have sort of burned him out a little bit just by running and hunting and dragging him everywhere. And I mean, he didn't really ever seem to complain, and he went with me and all that. But really, he'll be listening to this. But it's what I'd tell him, and he knows anyway. He once he got grown, he kind of got away from it. I mean, he'll come and hunt with me on special occasions. Sometimes we have some friends or family come in from out of town, and we plan a big hunt ahead of time. We went on a coon hunt not too long ago. A man and his son from a church we know that wanted to come, and the man's son had never been hunting, and he had seen the movie and read the book Where the Red Fern Grows, and he wanted to really actually go coon hunting. And so
was he shocked when you didn't follow him around with lanterns and chop the tree
down?
Well,
no, but I think he did, because in the movies. But my son went with us that night and enjoyed it. And I will say this about my son: he's actually a good, knowledgeable dog person. I mean, he knows what a dog's doing. He can call a dog. He would be good at it. But I know when he got his own life, and he's got 2 boys, and my grandsons, his boys are real active in soccer, and they're good soccer players. And even one of them got a scholarship on soccer. Good. So anyway, they stay real busy with that. But and then my daughter, she's got 2 girls, and they're kind of a little bit tomboys in a way. They actually probably enjoy the coon hunting better than my 2 grandsons do. Yeah. But anyhow,
I think my daughter likes it. My son likes it too. You know, he goes to all the hunts, but getting the dog ready and doing all the 9 to 5, the hard stuff, you know, he helps and he does good and he works hard at it. But you can tell that don't enthuse him much.
Right.
But the minute we load that truck up and go to that hunt, and he's ready to roll then. You know, and then he's watching coon hunting on YouTube instead of basketball or
stuff like
something
that.
like that. Yeah. But my daughter, I think she enjoys it. Just the act of going.
Well,
you know, more than he does. So
that's good.
It's weird how them kids vary. You know, you'd think coming out of me or you or whatever. You know, that's just shows the genetics in these dogs don't always get passed along either. Just like us.
And I'll say something else right here on this. Some people look back and say they don't have any regrets what they did in life, how they went about things. I can't say that. I really, Josh, was probably too hard of a hunter and spent too many hours away from my family, just to confess it. I didn't really probably realize I was doing it at the time, but now that I've got older, look back, I see where really I should have been wiser, and I took away from my family and stuff that I had it to do over again. I'd try to make better choices in some of that. I really would.
Well, that's what we got these wives for, so they can make better choices for us.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And
what about the dogs you started with, Keith? What kind of breeds, and what were your parents hunting and grandparents and stuff?
Well, back then, I mean, we like on the coon dogs, we just had different kind of dogs. Some of them was even probably grade dogs, you know, mixed dogs. But I do know my dad talked a lot about, he had a plot female one time that he really liked. Actually, I didn't remember her because it was while I was still, you know, if I was alive, I was just too little to almost remember. But he really said she was a good dog, and we had different dogs. And then when it come to the squirrel dogs, the same type of deal. Just a lot of times, you know, just a mixed mongrel dog makes a good squirrel dog, and we had different dogs. But actually, it was my grandpa Sutmiller that put a bug in my ear about the bird dog crosses. That, you know, that they really, if you found one and they would tree, that he really said he thought they made, you know, some of the best squirrel dogs. And so,
what year was that?
Oh gosh, that would have been. Well, that would have been, I graduated in 1977, and somewhere, it was like when I was a grown person and maybe had got married, we'd had squirrel dogs as a boy, I mean, all growing up, but then I found myself without one there for a little while, and I was telling my grandpa, I said, you know, I miss the squirrel hunting. And at that time, I was coon hunting a lot.
Yeah.
And then, and I tell you, part of what made me want to get to squirrel hunting, I knew I couldn't keep my little boy out or my kids out at night and expect them to go to school and stay awake. And I wanted to involve them if I could. And of course, especially my son, just not because of any reason other than a boy, you know, out there. But so anyhow, that's what made me want to maybe get away from the coon hunting more and get into the squirrel hunting, so he could go with me and we could do something that we could do together. And, you know, I wouldn't feel like I was keeping him out late and expecting him to stay awake and pay attention in school and everything. So that would have been about, that would have been like in the late 70s, 78, 79. And so that's when I told my grandpa, I was going to get me another squirrel dog, and I'd been without one maybe for 2 or 3 years. And that's when he started telling me that if I could find something with bird dog in it, that some of the best he ever seen was part bird dog.
Did you find one bird dog in?
Yeah, I did. I first bought a little mixed mongrel female, was the first sure enough good squirrel dog that I come up with. Her name was Queenie Belle, just a little, Lord, if you looked up ugly in the dictionary, it might have had her picture there. She didn't look like anything, but she really was a pretty good little old meat squirrel dog.
Yeah.
And then after that, I come up with another dog, and he was a half pointer and half Stevens. And actually, he was a pretty nice dog. But then a year or two later after that, that's when I come up with my Payday dog. And, well, by then that would have been getting in the late 80s. Yeah. And so anyway, I got him, and he was a half pointer, half Stevens cur. And then from there, and actually at that time, I was more just into hunting than I was to try to breed or raise anything. I mostly wasn't even really focused on that. And I kept Payday for a lot of years. I did sell him one time, and he was gone for 7 months, and then I got a chance to get him back. I really regretted selling that dog. And then I got him back, and that time I kept him. He lived to be 15, and he's buried out there by my dog pens. But as he started getting a little bit of age on him, he turned out to be quite a good reproducer. Yeah. People would breed a good female, and he sired 6 or 7 world champion squirrel dogs, and they all had different mamas. Yeah. And really he was probably only live bred to probably maybe around 12 to 15 dogs in his lifetime.
Really?
So he was, I feel like if anybody would have to admit he was a pretty powerful reproducing type dog. And one of my friends back then, trying to remember which one it was really, but somebody put a bug in my ear. They knew I thought a lot of that dog, and he was starting to get a little bit of age on him. And they said, Keith, you ought to check into getting him collected, so that way even after he's gone, you could still get you some puppies from him. And back then, I'm not even sure I was even aware that you could do that, or if I did, I sure didn't know much about it. So I thanked the person for bringing that to my attention and reminding me that that's an option. So I ended up taking him up to Stillwater to OSU to the universities where I took him back then and got him collected. And I was always glad I did, because it allowed me to raise a few litters of puppies even after he was dead and gone. And
that was cutting edge stuff back then.
It was. See, back then, everything was kind of different. I mean, even they was straws. It wasn't the pellet form semen, and you didn't get quite as many. The only thing, by the time I did that, he was already getting some age on him. I want to say he was around 11 or 12. And we did get him collected, and it seemed like we got like 7 or 8 breedings on him. But I actually took him back about 6 months later, and at first it looked like it was going to be successful. They drawed it, and they said, I believe he's going to be. But just while we was talking about it, the sperm went to dying off, and they said he still, probably could get pups live breeding, but it wasn't fertile enough to stand the freeze and stuff. And then after that, I had a son out of him called Jackpot that when the PKC World Squirrel Hunt was going, he won it 2 years back to back, and I had him collected and put in the tank, and then I had a nice male off of him I called Show Off that won and turned a lot of heads, and had him collected. So anyway, through the years, it's I've even still got some of that semen today in my tank. So
when did you first lay eyes on Payday?
Well, it would have been in about, like I said, it's the late 80s. I think I got that dog in about 87 or 88, and I tell you the story behind him. A guy told me about Payday and told me Payday was one of them self-taught dogs that was out in the country, and he just run loose in the country. And he would just tree squirrels, and he'd tree them just one right after another, but nobody even went to him. Yeah. And he wouldn't stay but maybe 2 or 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, because it's just like nobody was going to come, so he just tree 3 or 4 minutes. He'd take off. I mean, it wouldn't be very long. You'd hear him treed again, and he would do that for literally hours. And a guy told me about him, said, I know that dog's treeing squirrels. He was an old squirrel hunter himself, and I think he was turkey hunting when he heard that dog making all them trees. And he said, I went up there and seen that dog. You can tell he's real young, and if you could get that dog would be something if the right man got behind him. So, of course, I didn't waste no time to go see about him. And really the day I got him, Josh, a lot of men I don't think would have even brought him home, because we turned him loose, and really Payday, and I noticed this instantly, I mean, really not just saying it, or sure don't mean it in any kind of a bragging way or anything. But I believe he had to be the fastest dog I've ever seen to this day. I mean, I've never seen a dog that fast. And we turned that dog loose, and man, I mean, he was gone, and just in seconds he was in there 300 or 400 yards treed, and this guy that actually owned him, he was older than me and didn't get around quite as good, and we started walking, and of course within about a minute or two into the walk, Payday shut up, and a little bit he was treed somewhere else. Well, then we started going that way, and then a little bit he shut up, and he treed like 5 or 6 times, just fast as a dog almost could tree, but left every tree. And so anyway, I told the guy, I said, the next time that dog trees somewhere, I'm going to try real hard to get to him, because I knew in my mind, too, he was treeing squirrels.
You didn't want to be rude, but you really wanted to tell that guy to stay here.
Yeah,
I want to get to
right. Yeah, it's kind of what it was. And he said, well, you go ahead. I can't walk or do. Well, back then, I was pretty young, and I could run if I wanted to. So sure enough, about that time, he trees again. And I said, I'll be back in a little bit. I just took off. Well, I got that dog in my sight, and I could see him at this tree. I just wanted to see him at a tree and see. I like a focused tree dog. I don't like one to mill and move around. So I got within sight of him, and he was standing like a statue. That's just how his tree style. He treed off the tree a few feet, but he just stared. And actually, maybe that pointer bird dog, he wouldn't even hardly move a muscle. It was almost like he was on point in a way. He'd just be staring right up that tree. That was how he did. And actually, once you walked into him, he'd shut up and hardly ever bark again once you handled him or got to him. But so anyway, I could see him out there at this tree, and I could see what tree. I made a mental note is a big hickory tree. And about that time, he burst out of there and was gone. But while he was there, he was just standing. I mean, there wasn't no floating from tree. He was watching that tree just, I call it like a hawk. Well, I walked on up there, and there sat a big fox squirrel on the top of it. So that let me know for sure that he was. So I go back and tell this old gentleman, I said, if we can catch that dog, let's catch him. And he said, well, if we can't, he knows his way home. By the way, I had asked that guy, because before Payday come along, I'd bought 2 or 3 of them dogs running loose in the country, and really just threw my money away, because when you'd haul them somewhere, they didn't even know what you was doing. It's kind of like a dog treeing a squirrel in the yard, you know. And so, but then I'd bought 2 or 3 dogs, and they didn't work out, and I just give them to people. I thought the next time I hear one of these dogs that's self-taught running loose, I'm going to ask the person, we don't have to go that far, but let's load this dog in a truck and go somewhere. So we hauled him not too far, a mile from the house or so. And but it didn't matter, you know. So he went to treeing. So anyway, but that guy, he said, if ain't no big deal if we can't catch him, he'll find his way home. If he, you know, and I kind of was trying to.
Had no idea what he had, did he?
He didn't, no. But I was trying not to make it so obvious that I wanted that dog so bad. But he probably read through me like a newspaper, because I was probably just beaming, you know. And even my own brother, Josh, when I first got that dog, I didn't have him but a week or two. We went hunting. And I didn't get him out of that overnight, by the way, and I didn't have tracking devices. It'd be easier to train a Payday all over again with a Garmin, you know, where I could see maybe. And but back then we didn't even have that. And the way you turned him loose, he went so hard, and sometimes he'd get over a hill on you and get away from you, and you know, all that stuff. And but anyway, even my own brother, back to that, first time he ever hunted with him, that dog left 2 or 3 trees, and I, you know, only got to him once or twice out of 5 or 6. This was one of the first hunts, and my brother said, I'd kill that crazy thing. He said, what are you going to do with him? But I made a comment. I said, if I can get him staying on trees, because that's just kind of when squirrel hunts was just getting started about then. I said, if I get him staying on trees, I really believe he's the kind of dog that I could really probably have a shot of winning the world hunt.
Did you just say, I'm going to win the world hunt? That's what I'm going to do with that dog.
I planned to win if I can just get him. And, you know, it took a little bit of, I mean, it didn't just happen in a week or 2 or maybe even a month, but little by little, me getting to him, praised him, petting him. I think that did as much as killing squirrels
Yeah.
to him. He just
I was wondering, was it just killing squirrels, or was it just you getting there and him knowing you were coming?
Yeah, just knowing I was coming, and then I'd pet him. At one time, way back there, I had him going my way, and he'd been staying at trees, and I was gaining on him, I call it. And one time he got pretty deep in some hilly country, and it took me a little while to get there. And I knew, I was thinking, man, I hope he stays. I hope he stays. Well, just as I was coming to him, he didn't see me. He went to leave. He just couldn't stand it much longer. He'd been there for probably, if I was sort of guessing, he'd maybe been there for 8 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and he burst and was fixing to leave. And boy, I screamed out at him, maybe the only whipping I ever give the dog. And I caught him and kind of whipped him and jerked him around, took him back to that tree. And back then, I'd really even try hard. We used to carry a razor sharp chopping axe, and we'd liable to punch one, and it seemed like I spent 45 minutes getting that squirrel for him. But I wanted him to know, if you'll stay here till I get here. And I think the dog really was an intelligent dog. I think he almost knew what that whole deal was about. And, of course, in time, he become a tree dog that, he wouldn't probably stay like no hound for hours and hours, but he'd stay. You didn't have to worry about it. And a lot of my buddies that's tried these, they're not for everybody, them bird dog crosses. Some of my friends calls them hot-footed. They come up with that terminology. And it's not uncommon for them when they're young and just getting started to tree and then leave. Before I tell people, the first few times you hear them tree, just try real hard to get to them. And when you get there, pet them. If you can get the squirrel, great. If not, at least pet them, praise them, and little by little they figure out you coming, and they get to staying a little longer and a little longer. And most of them develop into pretty good tree dogs.
Do you think that, you touched on that earlier, do you think that speed that Payday had was a credit to the bird dog?
Oh, absolutely. That's where it come from.
Yeah.
Because through the years, most bird dogs, you can get a dud in anything, but most bird dogs they got drive and heart. The main thing I look for in a dog, whether it's a coon dog, squirrel dog, even back when I run rabbit beagles, I call it heart, but drive, hunt, it all really means pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
And I tell people, you can't put that in a dog. In other words, you may get on a dog and get rough with it, make it go hide from you, but really to have the kind of hunt that I like in a dog, where when I unsnap them, they're just driven to, it's like they're on a mission to get in there and do something and do it quick. I tell people, really, when a litter of newborn puppies is laying there, if a man could only pick them, when they're just laying there, but I say, really may not be any of them have what you're looking for. Could be one or two, or could be the majority of them. You just don't never know till you get it. But I love that in a dog, and that's what I expect when I put the bird dog. That's really what I'm looking for.
I know, because I love quail hunting, and I raised English setters for a long time along with my hounds. Traveled all over the country, and now through Joy Dog Food, I talk with dog guys all the time. And retrievers and running dogs and beagles and bird dogs, working dogs of any kind.
Right.
And to watch a bird dog that really wants to, you don't see that in every other working dog aspect.
No. Because
a good bird dog, from the time you drop it out of the dog box until you put it back in the dog box, usually they're hunting.
They are.
They're busy. When we would go a hard day of bird hunting, say out in Montana or something, them dogs may not get over 200 yards from us all day and still put in 25, 30 miles.
Right.
Just at the speed that they're moving at, just in front of you, working. And you can't find that in a hound very often.
You can't.
It's impossible.
You can't. Payday, of course, I could just talk for hours about that dog, because I had a lot of time with him and a lot of fond memories. But, of course, what I'm fixing to say about him, I've also seen from some of my others and some of his offspring. But I've seen Payday, if you wasn't careful with him, when you'd pull him out in the fall after laying him up during this hot summer, he would knock part of his pad off. He went so hard in rocky country. And I've seen him, Josh, when he put a foot down, it left a bloody mark, and that dog still just left there like you nearly shot him, just hunting hard and leaving. It's just like he hunted through that pain and hurt. And So anyway, just make you. I mean, just like he give you everything he had every time you unclicked the snap, and he really sired. I mean, a lot of them pups out of him. But after that, I've come to find. I mean, it wasn't just the Payday dogs, but I do tell people I've always told them the key to that is the bird dog.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's because when they bring up the pointing dogs and crossing them, and you can't just. There's got to be an art to that, Keith. You can't just take any old bird dog and breed it to any old coon dog or squirrel dog or whatever and make it work. And up until I started hunting with some of your stuff and talking to all them guys, I was quite the doubter on doing that. You know, my idea is, especially with the coonhound side, not so much a squirrel, is of all the walkers and blue ticks and red bones and English dogs on this planet, you ought to be able to find a good one of those, you know. But we talked earlier, it's harder and harder.
Oh, hard.
And, you know, now here you are. What are you looking at when you're making that pointer cross? I mean, are you looking at the pointing dog side too? You know, to see what those dogs are out of and what they're doing.
Well, you know, I actually did a podcast a little over a year ago with Chris Knight, and he was a nice man to deal with, and I was appreciative of that, just like I am today.
Yeah.
And he asked me a lot of questions about that, and then after that, I got a few phone calls, people wanting to visit and get my opinion, and they would ask me, "Does it really matter, like what kind of bird dog?" And I said, "Well, I didn't really always focus like on a certain bloodline of bird dog. I did actually use some LU stock and had good luck. But I said, but what I always did do was made sure that the bird dog side wasn't just that it was hunting dog blood, and and I always tried to find out if it was from parents that was good bird finders that really had the good nose and the winding ability, and then I just even at my age today, I like a dog with some hunt. Yeah, and. So anyway, I always wanted hard running, hard going dogs, and I always tried to pick a bird dog line that had what I was trying to add to, that it had that. Because, you know, there is some bird dogs out here that's just been bred for show, and they're not even bred to hunt. And then there's some bird dogs that's, and a lot of people ask me, did I use a certain breed? I mean, a bird dog, and of course, English pointer more than anything. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking too.
I have actually used a German short hair a little bit and had some pretty good luck. But my experiences, the English pointer, they're the hardest going, probably maybe even a little the hardest headed, but they're for sure probably the biggest running type, wider, harder going. Yeah. And even some of these, we got a friend of mine and me right now, we got a couple, Seth Graham in Greenville, Ohio, a younger guy, but a fine young man, good friend of mine. We own a couple really high-blooded pointer females together, and they was actually out of horseback field trial stock. I mean, so they're big. Had a guy a while back, it kind of shocked me that he said, well, does bird dogs have enough hunt? And I said, what are you talking about? Do they have enough hunt? He said, but here's what he was getting at, Josh, range. He was talking. He said, when I think about a bird dog, I think about them being over here real fast a couple hundred yards, maybe to the left, and then here in a minute real fast a couple hundred yards to the right, but I mean really moving, but just all around you. He said, I mean, will they go, well, I got a little female out there named Joy that's 11-year-old, and I'd say even today she's slowed down quite a bit with age. I mean, she'd probably go over a mile to find a squirrel if it's a bad, terrible day. I mean, she's kind of like a squirrel, you know, no reverse. You turn her loose, you get her. And he said, well, I didn't know. I said, oh, they do that. And so anyway.
The English pointers now, and a lot of the bird dogs that I've been around here lately, now with Garmin's and the tracking systems that we have and the nose that they bred into them dogs and how steady they are, they got more range than a lot of dogs.
Oh, they do.
I mean, just when we're bird hunting, we may have a mile-long fence row and we'll just cut them loose like hounds. Yeah. And, you know, they'd go down there and we wait till they point. We'll drive down there on the side-by-side or walk down there or whatever we're doing, you know.
Exactly.
And so I was curious, because motor is not a bird dog's problem.
Oh, no.
Especially the English pointer side. Mm-hmm. But then you talked about nose too. And is it necessarily the ability to smell something or how they use their nose or where they put it? Or?
Well, in my opinion, I like especially for a squirrel dog, I like what I call a heads-up type. I want them to win.
Yeah.
I really don't even like to ever see a squirrel dog put its nose on the ground, a squirrel dog.
Yeah.
About that way on coon dogs, honestly,
Yeah, I
but
am
especially squirrel dogs. Well, so even though you'll see it in other breeds, I mean, every now and then you'll see a coonhound. We call them a layup artist.
Yeah.
He can tree coons that's never been down and stuff. And you may see a cur of some sort, or really you might see any dog that can do that. But it's just my opinion, and it may not be 100% accurate, but from my years of experience of hunting all different kinds of dogs and watching a lot of dogs, it's like I'm almost convinced that maybe nothing has got the wind and ability equal to a bird dog.
Yeah.
I tell you something always amazed me, and you being a bird hunter, you've seen this, and this is pretty amazing when you stop and think about it. I remember my dad's bird dog retrieving a fresh killed quail that was alive 10 seconds ago that just fell dead, and I've seen my dad's good bird dogs be retrieving that quail and bringing it back to Dad and lock up on a second bird.
Yeah.
And you think, how in the world, with all that fresh scent under that dog's nose, can it detect? That's, if you stop and think, that's kind of incredible to me. But I'll say this too before I forget it. When I first started going to the competition squirrel hunts years ago, I was in a real small minority with a bird dog cross, and people would look at me like, this poor fella don't even know that they got mountain curs and feist and kimmers and black mouse and all these different breeds that's just kind of bred to be squirrel dogs. And a lot of times, a lot of my dogs, the Payday dog was a chocolate liver colored. And but when I'd breed him, I'd always get usually white pups, and I'd get them. There'd always be some white ones in almost every litter, and then some his color. And then he was half Stevens, which is a black dog, so sometimes some black ones. But anyway, and they'd all be in the same litter. But through the years, I hunted a lot of white dogs because I had a lot of them turn out white.
Yeah.
And, you'd show up at a squirrel hunt with nearly a solid white dog, and they'd say, I mean, this was years ago, and they'd say, what's that dog? And I never was secretive about what I hunted. I'd say it's a half-pointer bird dog, and for a squirrel, they'd look at me like it just floored them, And a lot of them, they never even really could get that or even consider it. And it's kind of funny now if you go to looking on a lot of the sites and the squirrel, and a lot of my friends, I'm not on Facebook. My wife is, and I look on there a little bit, but not very much really. But a lot of my friends felt like that when Joey won the national championship in December or something of 2018, I believe is when it was at. There was quite a gallery of spectators out there that day.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of them. I could even hear them whispering in the background about, man, I've always heard about a bird dog, cross dog, and anyway, a lot of people come to me afterwards and complimented that. They thought they'd seen some really good dog work and really praised her and all that. Well, a lot of my buddies said they felt like after that was when a lot of people, it just opened some eyes, and a lot of people got to, and then I did get some phone calls and stuff, and so anyway, but so now it's not uncommon, of course, to see that, but I tell people I showed you some pictures before we started, but anyway, I've just hunted these now for 30 some odd years, but I'm kind of on a mission, Josh, and I told you a little bit about it. But really, I tell people I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. If anything, maybe to myself. And I don't think you'd ever take a bird dog cross and ever replace a hound. I mean, where they just would get to the point where you'd start seeing. But I do believe that if you ever had the right dog, now I'm talking coon hunting night, I think they could really make an impact. And I've told a lot of my friends and hunting buddies, and some of them I can tell, I mean, they don't bother me, but they look at me like, Keith, I don't know, you might have kind of, I know you think that, but I don't. I tell you though, the reason they can't really see that, they've never watched these dogs do. Out of all the hounds, and you kind of about halfway said that a while ago about the foot speed and toughness, out of every hound I've ever had the pleasure to own, and every one I've ever had the pleasure to hunt with, and I've got to be with some good hounds through the years. that really was, some of the better hounds. I've really never been as impressed with any hound that I've ever with that I owned or somebody else owned as I have been some of the bird dog cross squirrel dogs. And the reason I say that, be leading one of them squirrel dogs out of the woods and it go to standing on his hind legs winding and reach down and unsnap it. And me being, I've clicked the stopwatch, just playing, just not trying to prove. I mean, I'm out there by myself. I just want to see. And when I hear the thing go to barking tree, click the stopwatch, and it's been gone, it's been gone 42 seconds and it's 380 yards or something, treed, and walk in there and shoot a squirrel out of the top, and a lot of people's never seen that, and a lot of people can't even hardly believe it. But them squirrel dogs of mine through the years, I wished I'd have had a Garmin where I could tell you what Payday hunted because he was just quick. But even little Joy, when she was younger, and I don't mean out in open fields, I'm talking about in wooded areas, it wasn't uncommon to look at the Garmin and that little dog be going 22, 23 mile an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, she's hunting that speed. I've never seen a hound go, I've never owned one that moved that quick.
Not for sustain, maybe for the first 100 yards down a field edge.
Yeah, but we're talking
like
maybe
that.
after she's been out there an hour and you look and she hunted like that for hours. And all them others, I could start naming them, but they all had that same kind of. And a lot of guys, when they've got one of these dogs off of me, by the way, they almost think they got their hands on a freak. They've called me back. I ain't never seen nothing like this in my life. I've never seen nothing that hunts this fast, this hard, this quick. I mean, you'll have to see this. And I just get a grin because I think, well, it's grandparents on both sides, it's parents, it's litter mates. I mean, it was bred to hunt like that. I mean, the whole family of dogs did that. So anyway, but
I think a lot of times we get pigeonholed in distance. Oh, my dog was in there a mile. My dog was in there in 3/4 of a mile, 8/10 of a mile. He's way deep, way in there. And we confuse that with heart and hustle.
Right.
And I've seen some of the hustlingest coonhounds in the world that may be still 300 yards from you 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later.
Right.
But they're working and they're moving and they're doing all that stuff. So, it's going to get, Keith, and just as well as I do, you've been around a lot of good dogs and you've been hunting a long time, but it's going to get where range is not as important as treeing everything in that woods.
Right.
It's going to be.
Yeah. And, I emphasize about the speed because it just kind of is something I do like and everything, but I realize that ain't everything that's just something that's neat to watch and see. But
I'm just saying you can have that speed and not be 2 miles.
Oh, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, a lot of dogs are slow, but they'll go. I mean, no telling where you're liable to get them before the night's over. Yeah. But the reason I just always thought, if a dog could win tree and go to a squirrel like that, I've always thought if you got one that really took a liking to coon and got to treeing them coon, that it could just be deadly out there. About finding them and treeing them and having them, and I just think if a man ever, and I'm hoping to be the man if I could ever do it, but if I hear somebody else, and by the way, there's been some dogs, I've known some good hound men that own really good dogs that told me that one of the most phenomenal coon treeing dogs they ever seen was actually a half bird dog. So there has been a few of them through the years. But most of them was accidents. They just kind of got bred or had them, and then they realized after, was given the opportunity. So we bred one of these females. We got some pups right now, and I'm getting really good reports off of them, off a rodeo in one of them. And
I seen Scott posted that here a while back. Yeah.
And then we've got and then we also bred another one to the fade to black dog. I just like that dog's pedigree. Yeah. Harry was from around here, and I even knew Timothy Ball personally and hunted with Timothy. I date back that far, and Timothy and me's shared motels at hunts before and stuff, and so anyway, I knew in my family we had a lot of luck actually through the years with the Harry dogs. Not everybody liked them, but they was kind of a tough, hard-going dog. But anyway, we got along with them pretty good, so. Anyhow, we bred a female, Seth. I mentioned him earlier. We're partners on them two females and bred. And we've actually got a litter of pups. We're fixing to have pups just due on the 10th of January, and she's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
We got a female bred to Echo right now.
Oh, boy.
And so anyway, we hadn't played around as far as trying to go to some of the – I never was a guy that just did something because it was convenient.
Yeah.
I mean, I've drove several states to breed a dog or buy a pup. It's so important that I'm trying to strive to have a better dog that I would always – I just did whatever I almost had to do. And one other thing, I mentioned Seth Graham, and like I said, he's a younger guy and just been a good friend of mine, and how we got acquainted years and years ago. He liked a dog with a lot of hunt, and somebody told him about my dogs, and he started getting a hold of me and buying puppies off of me, and he liked them. And he had a dog called Cash. It was a real fine dog, and just died here just in the last few months, but he was old. But he won a lot with him, and he was a good dog. But I'm going to also mention, because I'll mess around and forget, this day and time, the price of dogs and then what it costs trying to drive and promote dogs, seem like you see more partnerships than you used to. I want to mention a man named Chris Gilmer. He's from Delight, Arkansas. And Chris is a partner with me. He was a partner. He tried to buy Joy when he first hunted with her. He liked her and tried to buy her, and I didn't want to sell her. And then later on, he said, well, would you consider selling half of her? And you keep her and you hunt her, but we'll be partners. So I ended up doing that. And then later on, when Flo come along, he said, I'd even partner her on a coondog if you ever was interested. So we partnered on her. And so we ended up partnered on several dogs. But Chris has been a real blessing to me because it's allowed me to go look at dogs, Josh, that it'd have been hard for me financially to look at them all by myself. But, if you're splitting the cost and then splitting just everything, it's so anyway, I just want to mention he's become a real good friend, good Christian man, and been a really good partner for me. So anyhow.
Well, anymore, this day and age, you talked about dog prices. It takes a team, to do this a lot of times.
It does. And we talk about how dogs, it's so much harder to find. The dogs seem like it gets harder all the time. And I sometimes get to thinking, is it the breeding? Is it just the dogs? But really, I kind of believe more than anything, it's maybe we don't have the hunters like we used to. I used to know several men. I mean, it wasn't uncommon. These guys hunted 5 or 6 nights a week year round. I mean, I'm telling you, they hunted, all the time. And they just didn't go to hunts. This may step on some people's toes, and I'm not doing it that way. I'm sure not going to call any names, but seem like nowadays a lot of people their hunting is just going to like even the little 1-hour hunts during the week, and they don't hardly what I call keep a dog right through the week. Back years ago when we had mostly just the hunts on the weekends and all that, well, you hunted and tried to tune and get them right and all that to take them to the hunt Saturday night or something. And now with all the hunts and everything, it's just easy. And so, and some dogs can handle that, but I've seen good dogs swap hands and then people, didn't hunt them like they had been hunted, and really they wouldn't show to be the same dog, after a while.
Do you ever remember, because I don't remember it up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, going to a hunt and just hoping to get lucky, knowing your dog wasn't right, knowing you hadn't been hunted hard, because that was so foreign to me, up until recently. I never would have dreamed it.
Well, I was always the kind that I really wouldn't even go to a hunt if I didn't feel like I was prepared. One time, I owned the old Flo female, and I had her for a long time and sold her to Roger Shaver when she was gone for 2 years, and really didn't figure I'd ever get an opportunity to buy her back, but did, and I guess sentimental, I just wanted to bring her home. And I'm bad to get a dog and own it nearly a year and never transfer the papers. Reason being, I'm wanting to make sure that I'm going to keep the dog and like it. But when I got her back, I actually put the papers in the mail the next morning because we'll bury her this time. She belongs to Chris Gilmer that I mentioned and me. But one time she had been in heat, and she had been laid up, for 3 or 4 weeks, and they had a hunt, and I just jerked her up and took her. And she really did. That was one of the times she really kind of embarrassed me.
Yeah.
And she just wasn't herself. And I used to come in and cover the dog at night, and she don't do. And just, I don't know, she just probably not making any sort of excuses. But really, when it's all over, I blame myself more than I did her. I thought I knew better than to do that. And so I didn't feel good about it when I went, and I felt even worse before it was all over. And but most of the time, I was the kind that I wouldn't even hardly go unless I felt like that I'd prepared, my dog and maybe myself. I'm not a very good handler, really, especially at night hunting. I can throw a hunt away pretty easy sometimes, just getting flustered and making a stupid call or something. And but anyway, I thought a lot of times I should have tried to prepare myself more than my dog. I think it was better ready to be there than I was. Seemed like, but
no, it just seems, and there's so many hunts now, on the coon and the squirrel dog side. There's squirrel hunts.
Yeah,
it's coming into its own as far as these guys are hunting for huge chunks of change, and trucks, and all kinds of stuff now.
That's another thing, Josh. Years and years ago, I was asked, do you think the squirrel hunts will ever get as big, like the prize money and stuff, as the coon hunts? Well, I told Chris Knight that, and I'll say it again here today. I didn't, and because for several reasons. And I told people the reason I didn't think it'd ever get that big. I said, you go to a big coon hunt, you might have 100 dogs there. You go to what's considered a big squirrel hunt, you might have 30 or 40. Yeah. So. And then I said, besides that, you got a lot of serious coon hunters that's really serious about it. And back in them days, the squirrel hunts, squirrel dogs ain't any better today than they've ever been, but there's more better dogs. In other words, when you'd go to one of them squirrel hunts back then that had, say, I'm just going to pick out 30 dogs there, really truthfully, there was probably 3 or 4 dogs there that was really top shelf squirrel dogs, and the rest of them was just kind of mediocre, the more like meat dogs that you could kill squirrels with, but not really true good competition squirrel dogs. Well, now, you may go to a hunt that's got 30 or 40 dogs, and most of them dogs there's all that kind of a dog. And but there
do you think that's because of the prize packages?
Well, I think it is, and I mean, my goodness, now. Like you said, giving away trucks. I mean, the Joey Poston hunt the last 2 or 3 years has paid. It's something when I hunt, and I'm not throwing any reflection bad, but I mean, pays more than some of the world coon hunts pay. And I mean, at a squirrel hunt. And actually, just to give a little credit, and I think these guys are deserving, and I don't want to. The only bad thing about calling names, you might leave somebody out, but Joey Poston was real instrumental at that. Joey being such a competitor like he was, he had this thought. The first Joey Poston hunt had 9 dogs. And what Joey did was got a hold of people that he knew that he thought, he tried to bring together what he thought was probably maybe 9 of the most serious squirrel dog men and their dogs that had that kind of a dog. And he brought them together. And at that very first one, and I was invited and I was there. Yeah. And, of course, it was just a 9 dogs, so 3 threes, and that afternoon the final 3. And I didn't really have much luck, but I was there. And so anyhow, and then so Joey had that vision to do that. Greg Maynard now, that's been so instrumental, and he's doing so much with pro sport and everything. Of course, I like Greg a lot, and he's a good promoter. Yeah. But through the years, I mean, ain't probably nobody won any more in the squirrel hunts than Greg Maynard, and so he was real instrumental. Yeah. And then the islands, Jeff and of course Norman, they put a lot into it, and guys like Rod Hardy, and then of course later on Jimmy Inman started, NSD and all these different ones that to bring it to where it is today. Yeah. But I really never thought I'd see it, but it's here. I mean, and getting bigger all the time.
It's gotten a lot of crossover from the coon hunting side, too.
Oh, yes.
You see Colt Perriman out there winning squirrel hunts, and Dual Murphy,
right?
With an Ike Rainey dog at squirrel hunts now. And so,
Dickie Hale's hunting.
Yes, yeah. And I'm trying to keep my feet out of that water. I'm so busy.
I will say this, like me trying to do both, I mean, it gets a little tough. I
Yeah.
mean, you try to stay out there and coon up till 2 or 3 in the morning, then you try to get back up the next morning, and
Yeah.
I can do it 2 or 3 mornings and days and
Yeah.
nights. But trying to have both sports, it does, and trying to do good at both of them and have good keeping your dog sharp on both night and day, it gets a little challenging, and really, it's I mean, one might take a little away from the other just because of
Yeah.
the night and day and just trying to squeeze it all in.
Well, you may not make that extra drop that's going to do your dog some good the night before if you know you got to get up at 5:30 or whatever to go squirrel hunt the next morning.
You're
or
right.
something.
You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, and I've even been faced with that
Yeah.
where I think, man, I really hate to quit right now, but I'm supposed to meet, I'm supposed
Yeah.
to go, or I want to go, and man, it's already late, and so it's going to be a short night as it is, and all that. So it does.
Well, I want to just talk about the pointing dogs in the coonhound side just a little bit longer, because that's, we see what these dogs need. We see what our holes are. You look at my line of dogs coming off skipper, you'll get a good year, maybe 2 out of them, and then they get a little lazy and they lose a step, and that's a problem. Some of the brains that these dogs got, some of them are almost too smart for us, and so we're having to kind of adjust the way that we handle them and hunt them and do things like that. What holes are you seeing, in the coonhound side? Is it the same stuff? You seeing that maybe them pointers can help?
Well, of course, I don't like downtime in a dog. I can hunt a trailing type dog, but I sure want him to be moving.
Yeah.
I don't want him standing, I don't want him, like one boy said, I'm not so worried about where the coon's been. I kind of know where he's at now.
That's right.
And, not everybody would like a tight dog, and it's not necessarily that I like a tight dog altogether, but I can hunt them.
Yeah.
And I just like I guess I really do sort of favor a little bit of an ambush type dog.
Yeah.
That's just looking for his kind of coon. To me, they're a little more exciting to hunt.
Yeah. And they're more accurate.
And more accurate,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And so anyway, what I'm hoping to get out of some of this is that type of dog. I've never got the privilege to hunt with Echo, but I have watched him on some of them, some of the, live feed. And I know when Scott strikes him, he's got him treed pretty quick, and he's one of them. And Greg tells me that he really moves around. I'm sure you watched him.
Yeah, he does.
And does everything quick and in a hurry. So actually, if I ever get to write one of these bird dog crosses and it does what I think it can do, and hope that I get some that will do that take the liking to coon, that's just how they'll be. They'll be the kind of dog that, you'll turn them loose and people will be amazed how fast and quick they can get from point A to point B and be treed. And then my squirrel dogs recut outstanding. Even to the point, I was out yesterday evening and a dog nearly caught a squirrel, run it up and almost caught it as it went in a hole. So it knew that squirrel it went right there. And I actually snapped a lead on him, led him about 10 feet and pointed him another way and turned him, and he never even went back to that hole or that, he was gone, and then just in real short order he was treed again and they're different. So anyhow, that's what I hope to maybe accomplish. But I've owned a few tight mouth hounds that operated that way anyway. I had a female years ago, and some people will probably remember her. Her name was Cabin Creek Gurley, but she was nearly, bought her off Joe Tinsman in Indiana, but really Gurley was just nearly silent. You most of the time struck her and treated her in the same voice. But she was Pro Dog of the Year one year, and I don't know what her lifetime, I know she ended up, and that's back before he could win so much in one weekend. So you got to consider, if a dog won 40 or 50,000 back then, that's more than 40 or 50,000 today.
That's about 200,000 today.
Yeah, because they had to do it. About the pro hunts was about the biggest thing out there.
Yeah.
So Gurley had a lot of success, and I'm pretty sure when she died, I ended up selling her to Greg Dunlap in Pennsylvania, and he kept her till she died. But I don't know what she ended up, but I think it was up maybe getting close to 50,000. And she was a tight dog, but she was a coon treer, always by herself, and she moved around quick. But But even some of the hardest hunting hounds that I've ever seen, to me, if I ever get the right kind of a bird dog, I mean, I think if possible, they might even, might even get things done a little quicker, really.
Yeah. Well, as well as I do, speed's the name of the game.
Yeah.
It's all about speed.
It is in a way, because you're on a time clock,
Right.
and if you, and one other thing, it's more popular now, Josh, but if you'd have drew me way back in the 70s at a coon hunt, I never did haul anything that packed. I like one thing, there again, I'm not that good of a handler, and I'm not very good in a handler's contest.
Yeah.
And so if I'm having to try to hurry up and strike and tree, and we're all in there together, somebody will beat me with my own dog,
Yeah.
And I've even had guys in the past, if I had a dog, I've had guys tree my, and they'd say, why didn't you, it's like it takes my brain, by the time my brain kicks into gear, I'm too late.
Yeah.
But we all know if you got a dog in there somewhere all by itself and you hear them get treed, and really that's the same way on a squirrel hunt or a coon hunt, you really don't have the pressure on you you can kind of make sure, listen, and be a little more cautious and call them and all that. And so really all these years I've always hunted. In my success that I've had in the competition squirrel hunts and world titles and stuff, I know it's almost going to be hard for somebody to believe, but I don't think I've ever took a second tree ever.
Really?
My dog's always, and really one other thing that I always like to throw in, I like a natural independent dog. You can make them a man-made independent by shocking, whipping, all this stuff. But I tell the people that a man-made independent dog, they get hunt-wise for one thing, and it don't take them too long to realize when you're out there on that hunt and there's no prongs in their neck, or they figure that out pretty quick, that they can get by with stuff. And you just kind of almost like you got to always, it's like you never can let your guard down on trying to train but the naturally independent ones like I had, they just their whole life never really wanted to. They just wanted to go their own way and do their own thing. And, of course, I tell people, even them, if they would have fell in the wrong hands and been pack hunted and fun hunted with people, probably could have took some of that out of them just by. But the way I hunt dogs by themselves a lot, and I hunt by myself a lot, they had that to begin with. And then the way I always hunted them, they never really lost it.
Yeah.
They stayed that way their whole entire life. And so
we know. Because it's a sigh of relief hunting an independent dog every time you turn it loose.
Yeah.
And especially one that's a low-end strike dog.
Right.
I actually enjoy a low-end strike dog. It takes all the pressure. I know I'm going in for 25. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I don't even have to look at my clock for the first 2 or 3 minutes because I know mine ain't opening anyway.
Right.
So.
I usually hunted one like that.
Yeah. And I prefer that kind. I enjoy that kind. It's a lot easier on the handler, and my theory has always been all I got to do is tree one more coon than whatever strikes for 100 usually.
Yeah.
And if I can't do that, what am I doing out here anyway?
Well, I've had the same mentality as you, and I agree with you 100%. And used to people, because it seems like there's more independent dogs now than there has been in the coon hunts. The last few years, you see it more where you're just scattered everywhere. Yeah. But back in years past, if you had a dog that got its mouth open, then he a lot of times would draw a tailgater or two. They would come and get in there with him. Well, then even if you are hunting an independent dog, you're back to that same scenario where you got a dog now with yours, and you're trying to really, I'm sitting there trying to pay attention and, be sure I make the right call and try to get treed and don't throw my tree away and all that. But back in them days, if you had a tight dog that was a little sneakier and quieter and got away from dogs and low end strike like we're talking, and usually when they struck, they was going to get treed pretty quick and stuff like that. So I was almost willing to give up the strike just to have that style of a dog. Just what I preferred.
Did you have them, them low end strike dogs and stuff because I've had a few, 2 or 3 that I can think of, that when I turned them loose by themselves, they were open. They would open quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But if you could turn a Chihuahua loose with them, and like Con, for instance, he won't bark on the ground in a crowd.
Yeah.
But they would, if they were by themselves.
Yeah. I always found in my years of experience, most of the time, if a dog was going to be one way or the other, they'd be more open trailing alone, and they would get tighter. I did own a dog one time that was different than that, almost opposite, and I sold her, and actually she won the PKC World Hunt, and her name was Hell on Heels.
Yep.
And actually Eric Henry got her, and when he got her, he called me and he said, Keith, I've ended up with one of your rejects. He said, tell me about old Heels. And Eric's a good guy and a good dog and a good handler.
Yeah.
And I said, Eric, the sky's the limit to what you can win with Heels. And he said, well, what didn't you like about her? And I said, most people would like this. I said, it was crazy. When I hunted Heels, just me and her, she's actually a tight-mouthed dog, just you and her. But when you put her in a cast, she opens a lot more. And I said, just the opposite of most dogs that I've dealt with, and it was. And I said, of course, most people said, well, ain't that what you'd want anyway? You can get a better strike with her. But I said, but don't get me wrong, Heels ain't no Me Too. She ain't going to be packing around following other dogs. But because she gets her mouth open quick in a cast, seemed like she'd always have a dog or two with her.
Yeah.
I mean, they was going with her, and I just didn't enjoy hunting her for that reason. She's a fine dog, and I said, I expect to hear you do a lot of good with her. And, wasn't very long after that, he won the PKC World and won a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And
He sure enough did good with her.
Oh, he did. I mean, she was a fine dog, but that was one dog that was actually, was opposite of most of the dogs. But most of them's been, like you said, tighter in a group than they was by themselves. Yeah.
One more thing before we go squirrel hunting.
Okay.
Now, you've proved this wrong. My theory has always been on even crossbred stuff that's, Walker Blue Tick or two hounds or something like that. It's hard to get a reproducer out of that. You just look at them and they look like, well, that's just a freak. You got a freak out of a crossbred cross, and most of them don't reproduce. Now, that's been proved wrong with all Brett Myers stuff and the Trader stuff and all the crossbred dogs.
Right.
Sambo threw some great dogs. But you've proved that wrong with pointing dogs too, because you look at Payday and you look at Payday's pups reproduced and his grand pups or whatever, and that line stayed around and done a good job and still reproduced. Was that something you was ever worried about or concerned about, or?
Well, in the very beginning I was,
Yeah.
and I didn't even call the dog's name. That very first dog, after my grandpa put a bug in there to try to find me a part bird dog, and actually that dog was bred the same way. He was a Stevens bird dog cross, and he was a black dog with 4 white feet and all that. We called him, his name was that when I got him, High Pockets. But anyway,
High Pockets, I like that.
Yeah, it was his name.
I will say you got some of the best names, Keith. I do like your dog's name.
Well, a lot of them on Payday, we started naming them Cash, Credit, Jackpot, Gold Mine, Money. I can't remember. All these names come out just branches from the Payday.
Yeah.
But that dog, I didn't breed him much, but I bred him 2 or 3 times and never got a pup to do anything. Really. Then Payday come along, and he wasn't even bred for the first few years of his life, but I probably never bred him to even a female till he was probably a 4 or 5 year old dog. And when I first got him, he was, only probably, I think they said around 15 months old or something like that. So, but anyway, it didn't take me long to see that. I mean, boy, I bred him, got good pups. I bred him something else, got good pups. Anyway, he was a good reproducer. And then later on, see the Joy dog, and then she's got a littermate brother, and a lot of people that hears this podcast is hunting pups off of this dog, and his name's Gunsmoke.
I did not know Gunsmoke and Joy were littermates.
They're littermates.
Yeah,
I mean, Gunsmoke come from me. Well, actually, he's at Chris Gilmer's at my partner. We still own him together today, but they're littermates.
I did not know that.
And so when they come along, and I owned their parents' dogs called Bud and Katie. One bad Bud and Katie, and they was, but when that was actually a different line, but still half bird dogs. So, but I knew it would complement each other. I felt like. And of course, like just Saturday before last, or maybe it was a week ago today, or the Saturday before, a Gunsmoke pup won the Louisiana State Hunt, and I mean they've won. They're winning. Gunsmoke's turned out to be quite a good reproducer, but his parents was good dogs. And matter of fact, Gunsmoke was the dog that I bred Flo to, that had the crossbred pups that I told you I had some bad luck. And but anyway. I've just always, something that I've did is, even if I was going to take a female and breed to somebody else's stud dog, I always wanted to know what was that dog out of, and did he have any litter mates that done anything? Right. Because it seems like sometimes when you hear of a dog and he may be as good as they can possibly be, but they really truly are kind of what we always called kind of a freak. You know, sometimes when you do a little research, none of the litter mates really done much. Even the parents wasn't that special. This one pup just turned out to be a whiz-bang dog, and I mean, you can't take nothing away from his ability, but I really usually wouldn't ever breed anything like that. Yeah. And even when we first started breeding Gunsmoke to a few females, I really thought he would reproduce, because I own most of them in that litter, and I had a total of about 5 of them, and every one of them would go get treed. Every one of them hunted hard. They had, they was just a good family of dogs, and then the parents. And so I just thought, I don't hardly see how that dog can keep from reproducing. Yeah. And we've never really campaigned him or stood him like at public stud, but just really nothing but word of mouth. We've had quite a few females come to him because people's starting to see a lot of good offspring off of him.
Well, I had heard of him, and I don't know nothing about squirrel dogs.
I want to show you here after a bit. Remind me, I'll show you a video of him.
Yeah, but I want to see it.
He is a nice tree dog, and but I've just always tried to really stay with a family of dogs that, and then of course, and I'm a firm believer in line breeding, like the Payday stock. I did a lot of uncle to niece crosses and half brother, half sister. I did make 1 or 2, I guess you would call them, inbred. I bred a couple of good daughters, and I actually got good pups. Yeah. But I only did that a couple of times and did have good success. But I did do a lot of line breeding. Yeah. With any dogs, especially if you're trying to kind of your own bloodlines, like you got yours, and even in hounds or anything, if you go to making too many outcrosses, and you just, it ain't very long till you don't even hardly have just maybe a small fraction of what you started with. So I've always tried to, kind of breed them, keep the same kind of thing on both sides and breed it together. Yeah. And
that makes sense. Yeah.
So, but I've enjoyed this, Josh. I mean, it's been thank you again for sitting down with me. And I probably talk. The only thing with a guy like me, I don't know when to, I love, it's a passion, no doubt. I don't deny it. And so I can sit here and talk. And I was called on recently at my church to get up and take us to prayer or do something, and I can do stuff like that. But I was kind of blank. Yeah. And I think I even told them, I said, now somebody can ask me to say something about a dog or talk dogs. And I'm never without words because I've just done it, and it's something I can do. And I said, I was really confessing that I wished I had that same. I wished I could just on a spur of the moment could quote scriptures or give somebody a word of encouragement, and on that side. But anyway, it's just something I've always liked to do, and I'm really thankful, thinking about the goodness of the good Lord. I'm really thankful that at least so far, I don't consider myself an old guy, but I'm not really a spring chicken either. But I'm still it don't even really seem normal, but I can walk for hours and hardly ever get tired. And I'm still so far got my health, and I'm thankful for that. So,
well, I've loved sitting down here with you, Keith. It's been fun, and you're talking about talking. I know, and most folks that know me don't know this, but most of my answers to questions are yes or no.
Yeah.
But until they say something about a dog, then I could start. I could start in. So I'm a lot like you. I feel it. Trust me.
Well, like I said, thank you also. I want you to know I've enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
So. No, I really appreciate you sitting down with me, Keith. It's been a blast. Is there anything you need to add before we?
No, I hope I hadn't. I think I mentioned my son, winning that Youth World Hunt. That was a special event, and that was in 1999. Yeah. And of course, being my son and then taking a dog that we raised and owned the parents, and then he won that. That was a real special deal for me.
Was that better than winning anything that you won?
Well, really it was, honestly. And, I always said the way they did that, I wasn't out there in the woods or no other parents. They made the kids go out there by themselves. And, of course, I did drive him to the woods, and I sat there at the truck while the hunt was going on.
Was you a nervous wreck
I
the
was
whole
pretty
time?
nervous. I want to say it was a 90-minute hunt, and that was about one of the 90, and my boy, he was pretty quiet and stuff. And, of course, there was other cast out, but when he come back in, I said, "Did you do pretty good, son?" He grinned. He was really, he's actually probably quieter than I am, and he didn't say too much. And I said, "Well, did you win your cast?" And he said, "Yeah." And anyway, and of course we got back up there and everything, and he had won it and had the high score, but that was pretty special. But yeah, I've just just the dogs and having them, and a lot of good memories. And want to just say, maybe before I get off here, just made a lot of really good close friends through my dogs and through hunting, and thankful for each and every one of them, because the camaraderie. Matter of fact, I went to a funeral yesterday, and it was an old squirrel hunting buddy of mine that passed away. And of course, really in my life, a lot of my friends was older guys than me, just because of the way. So a lot of them's passed on now, but I still got a lot of good friends and a lot of people, and I'm thankful for that side of it. Yeah, but that's probably about all I can think of.
Well, I'm thankful for you sitting down with me, Keith, and the hospitality. You got a beautiful place here. I'm excited to go see these bird dogs go. I've been, I call them bird dogs. They're squirrel dogs, but they got the bird dog cross. But I'm so excited to go see them go. So,
well, we're going to go try it here in a little bit. All right.
Well, I sure appreciate it. And if you guys want to watch some of Keith's bird dog, squirrel dog cross action going on, you can check that out, of course, at Cane Stream Media. So, big appreciation to Mr. Sutmiller, and big thank you, and we thank all you guys for listening.